remember the day it all began, the day our school transformed into a house of horrors. It started innocently enough, just another mundane morning at Millwood High. The sun had yet to rise, casting eerie shadows across the empty hallways as I made my way to my first period class. But something felt off, like the air itself was heavy with dread. As I entered the classroom, I noticed the teacher, Mrs. Turner, standing at the front, her back to the chalkboard. Her shoulders were trembling, and her voice trembled as she whispered, "Take your seats, class." The room was colder than usual, and I shivered as I took my place. It was then that I noticed my classmates. Their faces were ashen, their eyes wide with terror. They stared at something behind me. I turned slowly, my heart pounding, and there, scrawled in crimson letters, was a message on the chalkboard: "He sees you." Panic swept through the room, and Mrs. Turner's trembling voice grew louder as she tried to restore order. But it was too late. The fear had taken hold, and we were all prisoners in our own classroom. The lights flickered, and the windows rattled as if something were trying to get in. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone, hoping to call for help, but the screen displayed only a cryptic message: "No escape." My classmates' phones showed the same ominous words. Suddenly, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. We were trapped, cut off from the outside world. Mrs. Turner's frantic attempts to open the door were in vain. It was as if the very walls of the school had come alive to hold us captive. The air grew colder, and a foul stench filled the room. Whispers echoed in the darkness, whispers that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. "He sees you," they chanted, growing louder and more menacing with each repetition. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Shadows danced in the corners of the room, coalescing into grotesque forms. They were the apparitions of children, their faces twisted in agony. Their hollow eyes stared at us, accusing us of some unspeakable crime. I felt a presence behind me, a cold breath on the back of my neck. I turned slowly, dreading what I might see. There, standing inches from me, was a figure cloaked in darkness. His eyes were pools of blackness, and his bony fingers reached out to touch my face. I screamed, and chaos erupted. My classmates were now all staring at their own spectral tormentors, each one different, each one a nightmare made flesh. Mrs. Turner had vanished into thin air, leaving only her trembling voice behind. Time seemed to stretch and distort, as if we were trapped in a never-ending nightmare. The whispers grew louder, more malicious, until they were a deafening cacophony in our heads. "He sees you," they chanted over and over. I couldn't take it any longer. With a surge of adrenaline, I lunged for the chalkboard and erased the dreadful message. The room shook violently, and the apparitions wailed in agony. But the chanting stopped, and the shadows retreated. The door swung open, and the school returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. Mrs. Turner stood at the front of the class, her usual composed self. My classmates were no longer haunted by spectral children, but I knew the truth. Something had awakened in our school, something malevolent that sees us all. And though we had escaped that day, I couldn't shake the feeling that the horrors of Millwood High were far from over, and that he would be watching, waiting to strike again when we least expected it.